Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
I am Jay Kumar, Assistant Professor in Environmental Studies at Geetham University, Bengaluru campus. Today, we are going to discuss on the fifth module in relation to pollution. At the outset, I thank Swayamprabha and Dr. Balaji for their support and approval in presenting this lecture. Well, in today's discussion, we are going to look on environmental pollution, very particularly on air, water, soil and noise. What are the causes, what are the effects, and what are the control measures available to prevent and reduce these types of pollution. Well, if you just look on to the pollution, this is a standard definition given by the WHO as well as United Nations Environmental Protection Agency. Pollution can cause an adverse change. So the statement is very clear. It is saying that any undesirable change in the physical, chemical or biological characteristics of any component of the environment, air, water and soil. That is the reason why we are going to look on to air, water and soil, which can cause harmful effects on various forms of life or property. This is the standard statement if you open into any of the textbook that is being given. First thing, it says there's undesirable change. In the sense the change is not welcomed. You don't accept it. You are sitting in a room and you find a piece of waste paper or a chocolate wrapper or other thing being kept on the room or being scattered on the room. So it doesn't give an aesthetic sense and it doesn't welcome a physical look. Second thing, chemical. Chemical in the sense is, for example, if any wastewater is being spilled or a dirty water is there, so it doesn't give you a pleasurable look. So it is an undesirable change. Or biological characteristics. If that room is invaded by rodents, their waste materials, excreta are being kept on, immediately our nose will sense that smell and say that this room has got rodents, cockroaches and other things. So any undesirable change in the biological characteristics of any component of the environment, particularly air, water and soil, is referred to as pollution. This pollution can create harmful effects on various forms of life as well as property. The life includes all the biological components, let it be plants, animals or microorganisms, and also includes the property because they are the physical space. They are giving the economical value to the environment. Now, if you just look on to the air pollutants, we can have three types of major air pollutants. One is gaseous pollutants, second is particulate pollutants, third is radioactive pollutants. Gaseous pollutants, as the name indicates, it is in the form of a gas. It emanates mostly from our industrial activity, transportation activity, as well as through the natural resources. If you just look on oxides of sulfur, particularly sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide, nitrogen, nitrogen dioxide, nitrogen monoxide, carbon, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. In addition to that, there are volatile organic compounds, particularly hydrocarbons and CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons. So these are the five major categories or five major important examples of gaseous pollutants. If you just look on to the particulate pollutants, particle means it is there are some particles which are not visible to our eye. So their visibility is not seen through our naked eye. They are microscopic in nature. So their size is measured in micrometer. It could be a smoke, it could be a dust, it could be soot, fumes, aerosols, liquid droplets, pollen grains. For example, aerosols. In the case of painting, you will have a characteristic smell. fine spray of droplets come in. So that is an aerosol. For example, I am just giving smoke. Whenever you are driving a vehicle, when you are going behind a truck or other thing, you will find a carbon soot to be emanating when the vehicle gets accelerated. A black color smoke comes. If you are exposed to the smoke, your eye gets irritated. It means that your eye will get dispersed, or in the sense the pollutants gets dispersed on your eye, very particularly small particles. In addition to that, there is one more group of pollutants, radioactive pollutants, that is particularly radon, iodine, strontium, plutonium. These are some of the major radioactive air pollutants which are happening through the natural decay of the radioactive substances present in the earth, or it can come through man-made activity, very particularly through the nuclear power plants. Now, if you just look on to the causes, the air pollution could be due to natural or man-made. The causes means from where the sources arises. In the case of natural, it could be through volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruptions, the volcano contains good amount of dust and dirt, which in turn contains the pollutants from the earth's soil or the earth material present below the volcanic thing. So it continuously erupts, emanates, and it has been estimated that 10 to 20 tons of dust or dirt containing the different types of pollutants, that is the gaseous and the particulate pollutants, are emanated through the volcanic eruptions. Second thing, forest fires. Forest contains vegetation, and forest fires happens generally during the dry season. So when the forest fire happens, the forest completely burns and there is no water to stop the pollution. Of course, recently it happened in Canada in a year back. Many animals were killed. Point number one is, when forest fire happens, these materials are made up of carbonaceous materials, and that releases carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and also oxides of sulfur. Second thing, biological decay, and of course sea salt sprays, photochemical oxidation of terpenes, pollen grains spores. Photochemical oxidation of terpenes happens naturally because of the photochemical oxidation caused by the sun. So there may be a biological decay, a dead animal or the thing that may release H2S, a characteristic smell. So these are some of the causes of air pollution. Why not? It may even release methane, an inflammable gas. Now coming on to the man-made sources, the first thing is thermal power plants. We all know that our electricity is dependent on coal-fired power plants. So when coal is burnt, it releases enormous amount of oxides of carbon, sulfur and nitrogen along with ash. So that is one of the major reasons. Second thing, industrial units. If you just look onto the industrial units, iron, paper industry, or it could be a tannery. So whatever it might be releasing more amount of air pollutants in the course of its processing when they are using ammonia to bleach, chlorine to bleach the paper. Next, vehicular emissions. It is needless to mention, vehicles have got their own mechanism of combustion, and catalytic converters are these days introduced to curb the pollution. Earlier, or whatever the technology we use in these vehicles are only partially combusting. There happens an incomplete combustion. The fuel is not completely burnt up. It leaves residues. In the event of it releasing residues, it releases pollutants. Next thing, fossil fuel burning. Fossil fuel, it could be petrol, diesel, kerosene or coal, whatever it might be. In addition to that, agricultural activities, it could be spraying of pesticides, the pollen grains might be happening, and agricultural activities also involves power to run the whole process. That way, it releases pollen grains, other dirt and soil from the environment, methane release. All these things happens due to man-made activities. In fact, the air pollution gets accelerated, increased due to man-made activities. Now coming to the effects, straight away we'll go to the effects so that it will be helpful for you to take the notes. Well, the effects we can categorize into humans, plants or properties or whatever it might be. In the humans, first thing, it causes straight away lung cancer. In fact, people say that it causes some allergy and other thing. Ultimately, it leads to what to say that this process getting gradually aggravated to lung cancer. In fact, you can see the picture where the carbon deposits are there. The pulmonary area is being obstructed, so the exchange of oxygen happening with the blood is being arrested, and as a result, suffocation happens. And in many of your pollutants, air pollutants, when you are exposed in the air polluted cities like Bengaluru or Delhi or Kolkata, whatever it might be, the prevalence of asthma is more. And moreover, chronic bronchitis. In fact, the bronchi, which is the area where exchange of oxygen and the take up of carbon dioxide happens, it gets inflamed. So automatically there happens an accumulation of water, and also it damages the air sacs. Very particularly, it's a condition called emphysema. And also the lung elasticity should be there. That is only responsible for our ventilation volume. So the lungs should be ventilated, in the sense it should adequately take in good amount of oxygen and release the carbon dioxide produced from the body. As a result, you find an acute shortness of the breath. You can scale it from down to up: acute shortness of the breath, loss of lung elasticity, emphysema, chronic bronchitis, asthma, and finally ending up to lung cancer. You can scale it from down to up, so that this is the gradual sequence on the effects of humans, and these are caused due to the air pollutants, and very particularly oxides of carbon, nitrogen, sulfur are responsible for these effects. In the case of plants, you can see that it destroys the chlorophyll. We all know that for the function of photosynthesis, the plant require chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a green color pigment. When the chlorophyll is absent, it cannot synthesize its own food. As a result, the process of photosynthesis gets affected. If the process of photosynthesis gets affected, first thing, the plant cannot produce its food. Second thing, the oxygen cannot be released into the atmosphere, so the carbon dioxide accumulation happens in the environment. So that again results in global warming and other more complications. And another thing is, when the air pollutants deposit on the surface of the leaf, it can cause necrosis or it can lead to chlorosis. In leaves, there are small pores called stomata. Those pores where the exchange of gases happens. In the sense, oxygen goes in, carbon dioxide comes out, whatever it might be. Those stomata is being blocked by many of these particulate matter, very particularly carbons, hydrocarbons, and other things. As a result, the chlorophyll is lost. It causes yellowing of the leaf, drooping of the leaf, downward curling of the leaf, which we call it as epinastry. In extreme conditions, they could not able to withstand the pressure caused by the air pollutants. They lose and fall out. Their stalk also get withered out. So that condition we called as abscission, completely the dropping of the leaves. So these are the major effects for the plants. The problem with the thing is, if plants get affected, it in turn affects animals and very particularly humans, because it destroys the basic function of the plant, photosynthesis. Now, if you just look on, the effects not only goes with the plants, the effects get manifested in the aquatic life. Particularly the air pollutants which go up to the atmosphere has to settle down. So the air pollution has to settle down means somewhere a scrubbing or a washing of the pollutants have to happen. So in the atmosphere you find water vapor. So this water vapor gives a support for the mixing of the pollutants, and they settle down whenever a first rain is happening. Probably that is the reason why we have been advised not to drench in the first rain, because the air pollutants settle down. Of course, in the rain, many times the air pollutants get settled down, and it depends upon the immunity of an individual. Nevertheless, it is generally advised that you don't have a drench or a wash in the first shower of the atmosphere. So these air pollutants mix up with the rain and cause high acidity, in the sense the pH from 7. 7 is the neutral. It becomes 6, 5, 4, and to an extreme conditions of 3. When it falls on an aquatic ecosystem, particularly a lake or a pond, the pH of the water gets disturbed. It becomes acidic. If it becomes acidic, fish's skin has got what to say that ulcers or incisions or whatever it might be, cut or whatever it might be. Second thing, the dissolved oxygen present in the aquatic life also gets disturbed. And because of the acidic nature, whatever the metals are locked in the sediments get liberated or released, that again in fact affect the fishes. So it is a cyclical complex process. So the acid rain which you are going to deal it in detail. So first it lowers the pH and affects the freshwater aquatic ecosystem. Now what happens when the air pollutants fall on the materials? First thing, these particulates are very particularly oxides of sulfur, sulfur dioxide, which is more released from the coal-fired power plants, thermal power plants. These particles deposit on the surface of the materials and induces corrosion. Corrosion means withering of the particles. Their original structure and color gets distorted. Next, it also accelerates the corrosion of metallic surfaces. Probably you can see in the coastal areas where the salty spray, seawater spray or salty environment or the salty wind makes the iron windows or the doors to get corroded. Another thing is when these air pollutants fall on the fabric, leather, paint, paper, marble or limestone, it leads into serious issue. It leads into a serious devaluing the economy of the product, very particularly leather, paint, paper, and the marble. People are speaking about the Taj Mahal marble. The actual color has been distorted, and non-invasive, non-destructive testing has also proved that air pollutants are responsible for losing the marble quality in Taj Mahal. Another thing is ozone. Ozone is a protective environment. Ozone means O3, three oxygen atoms. It is a protective shield against the ultraviolet radiations. That is the positive effect. And if it is in the lower surface of the environment or the earth, then this ozone can lead to cracking of the rubber. So the rubber could not maintain its integrity or elasticity. It breaks. It blocks out. Next thing is oxides of nitrogen leads to fading of cotton and rayon fibers, very particularly whenever people are going for dyeing the cloth. So there these oxides of nitrogen creates a white color patch because it is slightly acidic in nature. The cotton and the rayon fibers lose their dyeing capability and it becomes very plain or white. It appears to be bleached. So here and there you find patches maybe looking as a new design, but still it makes the cloth to be very fragile and it can be easily torn off. So the quality of the material gets degraded. So as a result, in the market, it loses its economic value. Now the question comes, if you just look onto the air pollution, natural and man-made causes are there. You find the three major categories, that is the oxides of sulfur, nitrogen and other thing, gaseous and particulate pollutants, and also the radioactive materials. How to control this air pollution? That is the biggest question. By and large, if you just look on, we are using a thermal power plant, which I have been repeatedly admonishing it. And the coal that we use contains good amount of sulfur. So when it contains good amount of sulfur, the ash value increases. In the sense, more amount of ash is being produced and less amount of energy is only released in the process of burning. So in the sense, you have to use low sulfur coal in the industries, or if the coal is having high amount of sulfur, it has to go for desulfurization. In the sense, it is initially washed with a slight acidic water to precipitate the sulfate content, sulfur or whatever it might be. But then again, it has got its own consequences. Now, if an industry is releasing gas through a chimney, probably it's you could have cited at many places That we call it as stack exhaust gases. So the stack should be minimum 15 to 20-meter height. That is the first point Pollution Control Board is emphasizing. So the stack should be so tall so the air pollutants can get dispersed. When the air pollutants are getting dispersed, it is based on the surrounding environment, surrounding temperature. If it is a cold environment, it can give a sandwiching effect. You know that hot air rises, cold air settles down. So when there is a cold layer and the hot air is going on, the hot air may get sandwiched, locked between two layers of cold air. As a result, you can feel the movement of the air flow that we call it as a plume. The plume characteristics you find it in the form of a waxing and waning, moving up and down. That we call it as a fumigation characteristic. So how to reduce it? First thing, depending upon the air pollutants, you can go for an electrostatic precipitator. Electrostatic in the sense high amount of electricity is applied so that the particles present in the waste air or the waste gas get charged, oppositely get attracted, settled down, and the precipitate could be collected. But the problem with the electrostatic precipitate is a fantastic thing. We call it as ESP in short term. Problem is the installation cost is very high and it requires enormous amount of power to run. Second thing, baghouse filters. These particles, the waste flue gas, can pass through a bag, and those particles could be settled down. Probably you could have observed it whenever they ground the floor. So likewise, a cloth bag or something or a polymer bag could be there, and these particles could get adhered inside the bag. There is something called a cyclone separator where an air is being forcibly pumped or the flue gas goes on a rotation and an outward movement makes an inward settlement of the pollutants down. There could be scrubbers, water may be passed or any other material, say for example oil or other thing are initially sprayed on the road to stop the dust, especially during disaster management. In the case of movement of the people to avoid the dirt, gentle oil spray. But here, water is being sent around. So, water is the best solvent in the world. So, it can remove the pollutants and it can scrub it. Scrubbing means rubbing it and settling it down. That can also happen in the case of air pollution. Now, these are some of the general measures. Regular tune-up of engines. I ask you, you may be having a two-wheeler or four-wheeler. How far you are frequently servicing, changing the engine oil, and you are keeping the engines in the proper way? Are you applying all the best possible driving practices? Do you follow the traffic rules? Do you apply the brake properly? So that the vehicle or the engine could be maintained in a proper condition. Next thing, installing catalytic converters. Catalytic converters is a concept kept in car and motorcycle where the hydrocarbons are being filtered with a wire mesh mechanism and the catalysis happens in the sense improves the reduction of pollutants in the system. Next thing, using a mass transport system, bicycles or the thing, these are all the attitudinal change we require in every person. Shifting to less polluting vehicles, particularly hydrogen gas. Hydrogen gas is getting popularized in India. Of course, in Japan it is being used. So less polluting fuels in the sense. These days people are advised to go for CNG, compressed natural gas. And you can also use non-conventional source of energy, solar batteries. Battery operated scooters are becoming more popular. So to that extent, the pollutants that are being released from fuel could be very particularly the petroleum based fuel could be minimized. The problem behind in a country like India is population is high. So change of technology has to happen. This is the first limitation we are caught. So if you want to replace the existing two-wheelers or four-wheelers with the hi-fi battery technology or the thing, it is a long process. It has to happen gradually. So this has to be understood. So every person who is driving a two-wheeler or four-wheeler, please keep a caution whether you require a drive. Can the drive could be made by a cycle or other thing or a battery operated vehicle, or in the case of riding a vehicle, are we having the best practices of driving the vehicle, following and obeying the traffic rules, maintaining the vehicle in a proper condition or not. So an individual change or awareness has to come very particularly in the control of air pollution. Because in India, the deaths caused due to air pollution occupy somewhere around 22% of the whole deaths caused in India. So it is a serious affair. We have to put lot of attention over the air pollution. Now coming to the next pollution, water pollution. So when you just look onto the sources, it could be a groundwater or a surface water pollution. Groundwater, in the sense, what is there present in the ground? How the groundwater, which is being taken through a borewell or a well or a pipe, is getting polluted. First thing, we keep septic tanks below the ground to collect the human excreta, whatever it might be. So that septic tanks over a period of time, if it gets leaked, that leakage or that waste water can join with the regular drinking water or other thing. As a result, the groundwater can get polluted with microbial organisms. Second thing, industries, particularly textile, chemical and tanneries, they use the groundwater in large to process their goods. Very particularly whenever they want to apply dye, whenever they want to tan the skin. So when they release the effluents gradually percolate into the ground and disturbs the groundwater. Third thing, sometimes since they don't have a space, they intentionally or directly inject the wastewater into the ground. That is called as deep well injection. Sometimes there might be leakage and it can disturb the water table. Third thing is mining. Mining we have discussed. In the event of extracting the minerals, large area is cleared. When the large area is cleared, you find depressions everywhere. When water falls on through mechanisms of rain or river, the water accumulates and it becomes acidic in nature because of the metals present in the environment. The three major components we just look on is arsenic, fluoride and nitrate. Arsenic poisoning is noticed in West Bengal. Fluoride is very common in West Bengal. This is what the report says. Fluoride, it results in fluorosis. Salt should be taken with decent amount of iodine. If salt is not being properly taken or if fluoride is more added to the groundwater, when that is being taken, it results to a condition called fluorosis where the tooth and bones lose their calcium. In the sense, the calcium is replaced by the fluorides, so our bones and tooth become brittle. So it leads to a severe condition, breaking of the bones. Now if you just look onto the surface water pollution, you can easily understand from the picture sewage. Sewage comes out of the domestic activity of human, common household activity. Next thing is industrial effluents. Industrial effluents is a very serious part because it has to be treated. If left untreated, it leads into a problem. The effluent means whatever the wastewater, let it be a textile, tannery or chemical industry, whatever the wastewater coming from an industry. That is called as an industrial effluent which requires a prior treatment before it is being discharged. Third thing is synthetic detergents. In fact, the biggest challenge posed in the treatment of water is the detergent and the soaps that we use. Soaps, you find a variety of soaps in the market. On an average, and in a house, they use minimum 5 soaps. 5 soaps are being washed or become faded away in a house containing 4 persons. That is what the statistical survey says. In fact, there may be a baby, so they may use a baby soap. There may be an adult, the adult might be using a soap. There may be a sub-adult or other things, so he may be using a mild soap. So the economic weightage is given more to the soaps because of the advertisements and whatever it might be. Each soap has got its own characteristic scent and other thing in addition to the detergents. So soap is one angle, second is detergent. We use enormous quantity of detergents for washing our clothes. We use the detergent cakes, soaps, bars, powders liquid materials and fabric conditioners. Enormous amount of materials are being added, and on an average you can see that in a house they use the washing machine thrice in a week. So alternate days they use the washing machine for a family of average family of four persons in a family. So you just think it over how much amount of detergents we are applying, and that too we are washing thrice a week. The quantity of detergent used by a family, four members per family, is somewhere around 2 kgs. That is quite a stunning statistic. In addition to that, agrochemicals in the sense oil and whatever it might be, we are using fried oil, all these things get added along with the sewage. Not only oil and other thing, the agrochemicals include the pesticides, fertilizers, which gets washed away. Next comes oil. Oil in the sense in broad category, the effluents coming from the petrol, diesel or whatever it might be. In addition to that, waste heat. Waste heat is observed in places like what to say that radioactive power plants or thermal power plants which generate heat where the water is being circulated to run the to cool the turbine or other thing, so the water gets evaporated in the form of a steam and it rotates the turbine. The excess heat has to be removed. So where they pump in water, that heat is being released to a nearby pond or a lake or sometimes to the ocean. That leads to a condition called thermal pollution, where the fishes cannot withstand the heat. The temperature goes up to 40 degrees centigrade, so fishes cannot survive in their environment. Their metabolism gets disturbed. All these factors are the additional impact of the surface water pollution. Now coming to the effects. If you just look on, first thing, whenever any effluent is added to a fresh water or a marine water, it first challenges the dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen means what? It is amount of oxygen dissolved in a given quantity of water. For example, 1 liter of water if you take, how much amount of dissolved oxygen is present in that? In the sense, oxygen get easily infused into the water and gets spread over. If you are having thirst, if you take hot water, your thirst is not quenched. On the other hand, whenever you have a thirst, you take a cool, comfortable water, well potable water, it quenches your thirst. Because the cool water contains good amount of dissolved oxygen than a hot water. So our dissolved oxygen plays a major role in quenching the thirst. So imagine how it plays a life supporting role in the fishes. Without dissolved oxygen, fishes cannot survive. You can find that fishes could able to move their gills. They'll be continuously flushing water, and from the water they could able to separate it through their brachial veins, and dissolved oxygen gets separated in their gills. And the saturation value, the maximum value found in the dissolved oxygen is 8 to 15 milligram per liter. If you lower the dissolved oxygen, it is harmful to the life of fishes, and there is a scale being given. See, you could find if it goes beyond 3, only crabs can survive, many of the fishes die. So minimum a fish requires 5 to 6, that too when they are living in a shallow open water area, 5 to 6 milligram per liter dissolved oxygen is required for fish, and only worms which survive in the sediments can be available. Other organisms all will perish. So the lowering the dissolved oxygen is quite harmful to the fish population. So if you just look onto the oxygen demanding waste, very particularly it is being added to the sewage. That is the oxygen demanding waste. Second thing is nitrogen and phosphorus compounds. In fact, nitrogen and phosphorus compounds NPK is being measured in the soil content, and it is related with the agricultural activity. If NPK is properly distributed only, the soil is useful, or it can be further applied tilled to grow crops. Or if the soil is lacking any of the major macronutrient, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, automatically they apply fertilizers and make the soil to be more fertile for the growth of the plant. In the event of applying enormous amount of fertilizers, sometimes during the rainfall or any other activity, these nutrients get leached off. As a result, it results in one condition called eutrophication in a lake. These nitrogen and phosphorus enriched water reaches a nearby lake. When it reaches the nearby lake, these food materials act as a good supporting base food platform for many of the algae. As a result, the algae flourish to glow like anything, and the whole lake becomes green in color as it is being depicted in the picture, which we call it as an algal bloom, algal spread. When they have a complete covering on the surface, they don't permit the oxygen to enter into the water and permit the what to say that your sunlight into the water. So when sunlight is not permitted, dissolved oxygen is not permitted because of this blockage layer of this algal bloom, many of the organisms die and they get decayed. So to clear the decaying materials, the decomposers come into picture. They use the oxygen. Very particularly, aerobic bacteria try to eat away all the dead materials. When aerobic material is being there, they use up the dissolved oxygen. So already the dissolved oxygen content is lowered. Many of the fishes and all the other aquatic organisms which require the dissolved oxygen at a minimum level of 5 to 6 or 4 to 5 are required die. So when they die, they decompose, the whole ecosystem in the lake gets collapsed. And it leads to an anaerobic conditions where you find a foul smelling gases, very particularly H2S and methane, emanates from a decaying lake environment. So the eutrophication is one of the major pollution aspect to be noticed with nitrogen and phosphorus compounds. In addition to that, it contains lot of pathogens. Very particularly, the sewage contains many pathogenic microorganisms, waterborne cholera, dysentery, typhoid, jaundice. In fact, cholera was a severe pandemic, and thank God we have been given some sort of BCG vaccination and other thing. So that way, these shots helps you to try to make some what to say that adaptive immunity over these many of these waterborne diseases. Still, you find cases, large amount of cases with typhoid, jaundice. Jaundice is caused by a virus, and the typhoid is also caused by a bacteria. So dysentery is quite common whenever the water is being contaminated. Probably that is the reason why we have been advised to take a boiled water, boiled and a cooled water. So the pathogens present creates a lot of diseases, very particularly epidemic diseases, which are responsible for the death of humans on a large scale. Millions of people have died because of the four major diseases that is being listed, and still you find cases, clinical cases, citing jaundice, typhoid, and dysentery. In addition to that, you could find lot of toxic compounds, very particularly heavy metals, pesticides, cyanides. Pesticides, for example, DDT. DDT is a pesticide used to kill the mosquitoes initially, because during the Second World War, Americans used this DDT invented by Paul Muller, who received a Nobel Prize, as a talcum powder all over the body. So they were very much fearing about a mosquito and also the spread of malaria. To get away from the vector-borne diseases, this DDT was applied on a large scale over ditches and whatever the environment it might be. But this DDT over a period of time breaks down to DDE. So this product is a highly toxic product. It can get accumulated in the body. If it gets accumulated in the body, very particularly it can get accumulated in the adipose tissue, that is the fatty tissue. The fatty tissue are seen near your stomach, all over the body, in the thigh region, whatever it might be. So this DDT gets accumulated, and sometimes during our burning of the fat, it gets released into the blood, causes severe troubles including cancer. Point number one. They are very more responsible for our nervous disturbances. And this DDT bioaccumulation is not only seen in humans, in fishes as well as in birds, where the bird's nervous system is being disturbed because it accumulates in their nerve synapses and disturbs the acetylcholine production. Point number one. Point number two, it disturbs the shell glands, very particularly the calcium producing glands, and it continuously gets disturbed. So this is what one of the impact you could find with the toxic compounds, particularly pesticides.